Welcome to our deep dive, and today we're going to be taking a look at Gone with the Wind.
Oh, wow. A classic.
It is. It's a classic, and we've got some fascinating excerpts that you've shared with us from the novel, so I'm really excited to kind of unpack this with you and explore these vivid characters. I mean, Gone with the Wind, we're talking about the antebellum South, right? Plantations like Tara, bustling Atlanta,
Yeah.
and of course, this ever-present shadow of the Civil War.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting. It's a world full of contradictions, right? You have this beauty, but also brutality, wealth, but also like this impending upheaval.
Yeah.
And I think Mitchell really captures this in that opening description of the Georgia landscape.
Yes.
And she talks about this savagely red land, blood-colored after rains. It's so vivid, and it sets the stage for a story that's just brimming with passion, loss, and the fight for survival.
Yeah, and it's not just a picturesque backdrop, is it? It feels like the land itself is almost a character.
Absolutely. I mean, in the antebellum South, land was everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't just soil and crops.
Right.
It was the bedrock of wealth, social standing, power.
Right.
So owning a plantation like Tara, that meant holding on to a way of life, a legacy. I think that's why Scarlett is so fiercely determined to protect it.
Right.
Remember her iconic line, "As God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again."
Oh, of course.
I mean, that's not just about food. That speaks to a deeper need, right?
Yeah.
That security and control in a world that's about to fall apart.
Yeah, and that makes me think about all of her contradictions, right? I mean, she craves love, she craves security,
Right.
but at the same time, she's so ambitious, almost ruthless at times. It's like she's battling these two opposing forces within herself.
Yes, and that complexity, I think, is what makes her so fascinating.
Uh-huh.
On the one hand, she's this traditional Southern belle, charming, flirtatious.
Right, right.
But underneath that, there's this pragmatism, almost a willingness to bend or even break the rules to get what she wants. Look at her marriages, for example.
Yeah.
Charles and Frank Kennedy.
Yes.
Both of them driven by this need for financial stability, even if it meant sacrificing romantic love.
Yeah, and it's almost like she uses societal expectations to her advantage, right?
Absolutely.
Playing the part of the demure Southern woman, but really shrewdly pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Exactly, and it's what makes her so captivating.
Yeah.
Here she is navigating this world dominated by men, and she uses her charm, her wit, to secure her place. But when those traditional means fail her, she doesn't hesitate to step outside those roles.
Yeah.
So she's resourceful.
She is, and it leads us to, I guess, the elephant in the room, right, which is the Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not just a historical backdrop. This is a catalyst for change that just rips through the South,
Yes.
leaving just devastation in its wake. Mitchell doesn't shy away from it either. She depicts that fear, that uncertainty.
No, she
The
doesn't.
desperate flight from burning Atlanta. Yeah.
And the just immense struggle of rebuilding afterwards. It's all there.
It is, and I think within that upheaval, you witness the true impact of the war, and not just on the land itself, but on society as a whole. The old order is crumbling, plantations are destroyed, and with them, the entire economic and social hierarchy of the antebellum South.
Yeah.
We see former slaves navigating this new reality, grappling with newfound freedom while facing immense challenges, and the rise of opportunistic figures those Mitchell calls carpetbaggers. Outsiders who descended upon the South, hoping to profit from the chaos.
Right.
It was a common term at the time, but it does reflect a biased perspective, painting these newcomers as exploiters. It reminds us of the deep prejudices that shaped how the South viewed this turbulent period.
Yeah, absolutely. And this period of Reconstruction, as it was called, aimed to rebuild the South.
Yes.
Integrate former slaves into society. I mean, there was immense progress, but also so much tension and resistance.
Absolutely.
So much pain. And the ramifications of that era extend far beyond the novel's time frame. It shapes race relations, social dynamics for generations to come. Really, it's a legacy that I think we're still grappling with today.
We are. And so we have this backdrop of war, societal earthquake, and within that you have these complex human relationships playing out. We're talking about Scarlett's unrequited love for Ashley Wilkes, her tumultuous marriage to Rhett Butler,
Yeah.
the unwavering loyalty of Melanie, Ashley's wife. It's just a tangled web of love, loyalty, and heartbreak.
Oh, it is. And it's fascinating how Mitchell juxtaposes different forms of love, right?
Yeah.
Scarlett's feelings for Ashley are very passionate,
Uh-huh.
but also possessive, idealized. It's almost like a love rooted in fantasy, a longing for a past that she can never get back. Whereas Melanie, she embodies a more selfless, enduring kind of love.
Yes.
Her devotion to Ashley is unwavering, even with all the hardship and uncertainty. She represents a moral compass, which is a stark contrast to Scarlett's pragmatism and ambition.
And then you have Rhett, who is cynical yet undeniably drawn to Scarlett. He sees through her facade, through her manipulations,
Yeah.
but his feelings for her seem so genuine, at least at first.
Right, and what I find so captivating about Red is his ability to operate within this very complex world, but remain detached at the same time. He profits from the war, understands the shifting power dynamics,
Uh-huh.
but he longs for that genuine connection.
Yeah.
And that famous line of his, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," delivered with such nonchalance.
I know, I know.
But it reveals a deeper disillusionment.
Yeah.
It's like a breaking point, the realization that even his love for Scarlett has its limits.
And that line is so powerful precisely because it is so understated.
It is.
It's not a grand declaration. It's just this quiet acceptance of defeat.
Exactly. And it speaks volumes about Rhett's character. He's a man who's seen it all, experienced the good and the bad, and at that moment, he just chooses to walk away
Yeah.
rather than cling to a love that's become, well, toxic.
He does. And so we have this backdrop of war, social upheaval, these complex relationships. And then there's Scarlett's just unwavering determination to survive,
Yeah.
to rebuild what's been lost. It's almost like she embodies the spirit of the South itself,
Right.
clinging to the past while fighting for a future that's constantly changing.
I think you're right. I think Scarlett's journey really reflects the South's own struggle for survival. It's that resilience, but also the refusal to fully confront the changing world. That tension, that's what makes Gone with the Wind so compelling, so enduring.
It does.
It's a story for the ages.
It is, and it's a story that will continue to unravel in the next part of our deep dive. So stay tuned as we explore the impact of the war on Scarlett's psyche, the changing dynamics of her relationships, and the very difficult choices that she makes in the face of unimaginable hardship. Welcome back to our deep dive into Gone with the Wind. When we left off, Rhett had just made his devastating exit, and Scarlett's left to face the consequences of her choices, all in a world completely reshaped by the war.
It's like the dust settles and you see the wreckage left behind.
Right.
That grandeur of the Old South, it's gone, crumbled. And Scarlett finds herself stripped of all those illusions that had been guiding her.
She's lost Rhett, the one man who truly saw her for who she was. And even though, she finally admits she never really loved Ashley the way she thought she did, there's this profound sense of emptiness.
Yeah, there is. It's like a moment of reckoning for her.
It is, yeah.
But what's interesting is that Mitchell uses this crisis as an opportunity to explore Scarlett's capacity for growth.
Okay, yeah.
Throughout the novel, she's been so driven by survival, right? By acquiring wealth, social standing.
Right.
And now she's forced to confront the loss of all those external validations. It leaves her grappling with what truly matters.
And it's a struggle, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
I mean, she's still clinging to that O'Hara stubbornness, that fiery pride.
Absolutely.
Remember that scene where she throws a vase in frustration?
Oh, yeah.
It's so raw, so unfiltered, and it reveals that vulnerability beneath that carefully constructed facade that she's built for herself.
It's incredibly telling. She's not that composed Southern belle anymore. She's a woman wrestling with grief, regret, and I think a dawning self-awareness. And it's in this broken state that she utters those famous words, "Tara, home. I'll go home, and I'll think of some way to get him back. After all, tomorrow is another day."
And that line, "Tomorrow is another day," it's become so iconic.
It has.
It's often seen as, a testament to her resilience,
right.
her unwavering optimism. But is it really that simple?
That's a great question. I mean, on the surface, it seems hopeful, a declaration that she refuses to be defeated. But I think you could also interpret it as clinging to the past,
Okay.
a belief that she can simply will things back to how they were.
So it's not just about getting Rhett back.
Yeah.
It's about Scarlett confronting this future where the old rules no longer apply, where she has to redefine herself without all those societal structures that had always defined her.
Exactly. The South itself is going through that same transformation. The plantation system's gone, the social hierarchy's been upended, and Scarlett, just like the region she embodies, has to adapt to this new reality. The question is, can she evolve beyond those deeply ingrained beliefs and desires that she has?
And, that leads us to, I think, the complex relationship that she has with money. It's more than just, a means of survival for her.
Right.
It's a symbol of power and control in this world where she's constantly fighting for agency.
And we see money become both her salvation and her downfall throughout the novel.
Uh-huh.
It allows her to save Tara from being seized for taxes. But at the same time, that relentless pursuit of wealth, it often comes at the expense of real human connection.
And her marriage to Frank Kennedy is a perfect example of that, isn't it?
It is.
This calculated move to secure financial security, but there's no love there. There's no genuine affection.
And it further alienates her from Rhett, who sees her ambition, but also the emptiness behind it. He wants a deeper connection with her, one that transcends material wealth. But Scarlett just can't see past her own desires.
And it leads to, I think, one of the most pivotal moments in their relationship,
Well,
the death of their daughter, Bonnie.
oh, absolutely.
It's just this heart-wrenching event that exposes just how fragile their bond has become.
Right.
And really the tragic consequences of the choices that they've both made.
And that loss is a blow to both of them, but it affects them in different ways. For Rhett, it shatters any hope he had left for their relationship.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that despite his cynicism, he loves Bonnie deeply, and he saw in her a glimmer of the woman Scarlett could have been.
And for Scarlett, it seems like initially Bonnie's death is just another obstacle to overcome, just another loss to grieve and move on from.
Yeah.
It's only later, after Rhett leaves, that the true weight of her grief and the depth of her own capacity for love begin to surface.
Exactly. It's in those final moments, as Rhett says, "My dear, I don't give a damn," that Scarlett is truly confronted with the consequences of her actions. His words, they're not just a dismissal.
Yeah.
It's the recognition that he's reached his limit. He's tired, exhausted by her pursuit of Ashley, her obsession with money, her inability to truly love him in return.
And with his departure, Scarlett is left completely stripped bare.
Yeah.
The facade crumbles, and she's just left there with the wreckage of her own making. It's bleak, but it also holds this glimmer of possibility.
It does.
Because for the first time, maybe she's truly open to change.
And Mitchell leaves us hanging, right? Will she actually change? Can she learn from those mistakes and create a new path for herself? One that prioritizes genuine connection over material wealth? The novel doesn't give us easy answers, so we're left pondering the complexities of Scarlett's character and the enduring power of hope, even when faced with such profound loss.
And that's part of what makes Gone with the Wind so captivating, so thought-provoking.
Yeah, it is.
It's about survival, resilience, and the human capacity for, such great love, but also profound selfishness. But there's another layer to the story, one that explores the complexities of a changing South, the legacy of slavery, and the struggle for identity in this world just torn apart by war.
Absolutely. I mean, we've focused a lot on Scarlett's journey, but it's important to acknowledge those broader social and historical forces at play. The novel gives us a glimpse into this pivotal moment in American history, a time of immense change and upheaval. And within that context, we see characters grapple with these issues of race, class, and gender, and it leaves us with questions that still resonate even today.
And those are questions that we're going to delve into in the final part of our deep dive. So join us as we explore the legacy of Gone with the Wind, its impact on our culture, and its lasting relevance in a world still wrestling with the echoes of its past.
Welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into Gone with the Wind. We've gone through so much with Scarlett, her heartbreaks, her triumphs. We saw the old South crumble, and we really dug into what makes her tick. But now I think it's time to look at the novel's legacy, how it sits with us today. I mean, it's a book that people still talk about, debate about, especially when it comes to how it portrays the South and that whole romanticized view of slavery.
You're right. That's a big one. Gone with the Wind is very much a product of its time.
Yeah.
You can see those prevailing attitudes and biases of the era woven right into it. And while I think we can appreciate Mitchell's skill as a writer and how powerful her story is, we can't ignore those harmful aspects either.
So how do we balance those two? The undeniable beauty of the book, but also those problematic portrayals of history. I think it takes nuance. You have to hold both of those ideas in your head at the same time. We can admire Mitchell's scope, how she just pulls you into another time and place, but also acknowledge that the world she depicts isn't completely accurate. It's filtered through a lens that sometimes distorts and romanticizes the realities of slavery in the antebellum South.
It's kind of like when you look at a beautiful painting. You can appreciate the art, but you also know the artist had their own perspective, maybe even some biases.
Exactly. We wouldn't just look at a painting without considering the context it was created in.
Right.
And we can't do that with Gone with the Wind either. We have to read it with a critical eye, question its assumptions, and recognize how it reinforces stereotypes about race, class, and gender.
That makes me think about how Reconstruction is portrayed, that period after the Civil War where they were trying to rebuild the South and integrate former slaves into society. It was such a turbulent time.
It was. And while Mitchell does touch on these themes, you can definitely see the influence of the lost cause mythology in her perspective. That romanticized narrative that kind of downplays the horrors of slavery and tries to paint the Confederacy in a better light. Understanding that historical context is key to really grasping the limitations of how the novel depicts this era.
So it's not enough to just read Gone with the Wind for fun, right?
Mhm.
We have to engage with it as a piece of history, understanding the time and the perspective it comes from.
It's a chance to learn from the past, to see how these historical narratives get shaped, and to have those tough conversations about the legacies of slavery and racism that we're still dealing with today.
And throughout all of this, we have these incredible female characters. Scarlett, especially, even with all her flaws, she shows this incredible strength and resilience in a society that's constantly trying to box her in.
It's true. She's a fascinating character, so full of contradictions. She's independent, ambitious, resourceful. But at the same time, she's so caught up in the patriarchal values of her world. She wants love and security, but she often chooses wealth and status over genuine connection.
It's like she's stuck between two worlds, the old South that's fading and this new era that's emerging.
And she navigates that tension with this determination that's both impressive and a little frustrating. She breaks social norms, takes on roles usually meant for men. She refuses to give up, even when she's lost so much.
But she doesn't always make the best choices, right? A lot of what she does comes from that need to survive, to protect herself and the people she cares about, even if it means compromising her values.
And that's what makes her so complex, so interesting as a character. She's not a perfect heroine. She's a flawed human being making tough choices in a world that's changing dramatically.
It makes you wonder if she's a feminist figure, even if it wasn't intentional.
Right.
I mean, she pushes against those limitations placed on women, even if it's for her own benefit.
That's something people are still debating, scholars and readers alike. On one hand, her actions are often about self-preservation and keeping her status, but she also represents a kind of defiance, a refusal to be controlled by what society expects of her.
I think that's part of what makes Gone with the Wind so enduring and controversial. It sparks debate, challenges our assumptions, makes us confront uncomfortable truths about the past and even ourselves.
It's a novel that asks you to read it with both a critical and empathetic eye. You have to see its flaws, but also appreciate its ability to take you to another time and place, to make you think, to make you feel, to make you question the world around you.
And so as we wrap up our deep dive into Gone with the Wind, I'm really struck by how much the novel still resonates.
It does, doesn't it?
It's a story that still draws readers in, sparks the conversations, and offers a window into this crucial period in American history.
And that's a testament to Mitchell's writing. She built a world both beautiful and flawed, filled with characters that feel larger than life. It's a story that keeps speaking to readers, generation after generation.
And with that, we'll leave you with one last thing to think about. What does Scarlett's final line, "Tomorrow is another day," really say about her, about the future of the South, and about our own ability to be resilient and to change? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.